Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to take about 30 minutes for an introduction, and no. But I do want to introduce myself. A lot of you don't know me. I'm Sychtysz, and I've been preaching the gospel full-time for over 30 years. And so I'd better do a good job up here, right? So I really appreciate Mariano and Jack giving me an opportunity to speak this morning. I stayed with Jack and Ann the last couple days. They are just excellent hosts, in case you're wondering. They are good people, and I really appreciate them so much. So wish they were here, but he's already scheduled to preach in McMinnville, as I understand. So anyway, I don't know where everyone's at as far as your spiritual well-being is concerned, so I'm going to be able to speak very candidly, right? Very straightforwardly, because I am not stepping on anyone's toes that I know of, and I'm not pointing out anyone's particular problems. And I'm not trying to direct this lesson or be pointed in any way. But I am going to talk about some things that are super important. And in fact, some things that were already covered in the class this morning. You almost stole my thunder. I thought I was going to get up here and go, well, what he said, and then be done. But there's a lot of overlapping, and that's a good thing. I actually think that is a really good thing when you've got the classes and the preaching all dovetailed together like that. So let's get started. We're going to talk about an increasing awareness. The major factor in many auto accidents, inattentiveness in one form or another. Think about that. People not paying attention, not aware of their surroundings. Basically, you're driving a 3,500-pound missile at 65 miles an hour down the road. And at the same time, you're thinking perhaps, you being anyone, right? It's okay to suddenly update your music file while you're driving and to have an animated phone conversation and to eat a cheeseburger all at once. People do this sort of thing. I speak from experience. So it's something that we do, and we don't always think about the fact that things could go wrong in a very big hurry. It's not limited to driving. People can be inattentive and unaware in a number of different contexts. Sometimes people say things that comes across as rude and insensitive, and all because, if we could use the modern vernacular, they don't read the room. They walk into a scenario or into a relationship or people talking, and they're not paying attention to what's going on. They're not paying attention to who's there. And so it is with relationships sometimes. People take them for granted. They do or say things that are inappropriate or offensive or harmful. Sometimes we're insensitive to what someone else is going through. Maybe they're going through an illness, a long-term serious illness, or maybe they're grieving. They've just lost somebody, and we kind of might say something flippant, not realizing the depth of the seriousness of what they're facing there. Or aging is another factor. I'm starting to be more aware of aging, right? Because I'm getting older too. I think all of us have gotten older in the last year. So the idea here is that we might say things that are insensitive to that age group. So there's some other things to think about, specifically in marriage. Many spouses might have heated arguments simply because one or the other or both are not paying attention to the other. They're not listening to what the other is saying. They're not paying attention to what they're going through, and they're only focusing on what they see or their perception of what's happening. Parenting is another area. It's not uncommon for parents to be caught up in their own world, so much so that they're not paying attention to their children, their circumstances. They neglect their needs, their affection, their welfare. Later on in hindsight, it's not unusual for parents to say something to the effect of, I was not aware of what my child was going through at that time, and I didn't treat that child appropriately. I didn't regard their situation that way. Sometimes Christians do this to other Christians. They become so fixated, so focused on their own lives that they fail to look out for the best interests of others, which is what we're told to do, right? Philippians 2, verse 3 and 4. Set your own interests aside for the interests of others. Doesn't mean your interests are unimportant. It just means that there's a priority there in dealing with people. Despite all the warnings and instructions in the New Testament, sometimes this still happens, inattentiveness. So the worst kind of unawareness or inattentiveness is regarding your soul. I think that's why we're all here, because we have spiritual needs and we have spiritual attention, and I commend you all for responding to that spiritual need by being here. But sometimes we're not paying attention to that the way that we should. We're not slowing down. We're not refocusing. We're not paying attention to our own spiritual condition. It is my opinion, based on years of observation, that sometimes we just kind of set our spiritual life on autopilot. And then we just kind of cruise for the next, 10 or 15 years. And we go to church and we sing the songs. We take the Lord's Supper. We do all the church stuff, but we're not really focusing on why we're doing it or what it's supposed to be doing for us. We're not really always involved in the way that we should be. We're just pointing our soul kind of in the right direction and just hoping that it gets to where it's supposed to go. Meanwhile, we suffer and we languish, and we're not really, growing and maturing the way that we should in Christ. When we take time and effort to be aware, then we see things as we might not have seen them before. Sometimes our awareness needs to be sharpened and enhanced because we have been given the right tools to make that enhancement possible. You see me wearing glasses. I haven't always wore glasses. When I was in high school, I did not wear glasses. I used to think that the chalkboard, I know, chalkboard, right? Chalk was just invented, and we just invented chalkboards. So anyway, not smartboards. I was thinking that the chalkboard was always blurry. That's how I always saw it. I assumed that it was always blurry to everybody. And it wasn't until I was 20 years old, I got glasses, and I remember going from the optometrist the first time with my glasses, looking at road signs like I could actually read them. And there were trees, and there are other cars, and things like this that I had never really seen with, this pristine definition before. And on a spiritual level, that's how we can see things spiritually when we start focusing. When we have the right apparatus, right? I don't mean glasses literally, but when we have the tools, when we have the resources to do so. So the gospel is God's prescription for the heart. And without the gospel, he says, not me, but he says that we are ignorant, blind, and groping in darkness. And this is true about Christians as it is non-Christians. Without the gospel, we are all groping in darkness. No matter who we are, how good of things we've done in the past, our soul needs priority attention. But if you allow the word to teach you and to open up your eyes and really open up your heart and see reality as God has revealed it to you, then you can start drawing near to him. Once again, I want to say I'm not suggesting that you aren't doing that already. I have no idea. I'm just saying what I'm saying, okay? And see where the message falls, so to speak. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, I saw that on your intermission slide there. It says, watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. That word watch there in the Hebrew means to guard, to protect, to secure. We might say in another way, to be acutely aware of something. Watch over your heart. Don't pay passive attention, give it acute attention. Not adorable attention. I meant acute, like in, special, very particular attention there. Okay? Tough crowd this morning. Wow. So anyway, give close scrutiny to your heart. In essence, pay attention to what's going in because it will be coming out. Right? As Jack told me this weekend, we were talking about similar things. He says, if you don't deal with your stuff will deal with you. You probably heard that already. I don't know do you have Costco around here? Yeah. So we have Costco's in my area, and this is what I see a lot of times when I'm in Costco at the checkout line. I see baskets full of garbage. I see baskets full of junk food and high carbs, greasy, fatty, everything all like that. I'm not saying my cart doesn't have any of these, but in this particular example, we're using the extreme to make the point, right? So you have all this fatty, sugary foods. That's poor intake. And if you continue to eat like that for years, then later you're going to be weak and unhealthy and probably diabetic. Why? Because you didn't pay attention to what was going in. You didn't pay attention to what you were putting into your body, and then it comes out in bad ways. Makes sense. Poor diet can make you sick. It can make you vulnerable to disease and infection. A poor spiritual diet kind of does the same thing to your soul, right? It will corrupt your heart. It will make you spiritually weak. It will make you vulnerable to being deceived and misled. Have you ever heard someone, for example, chronically misses the assembly of the saints, and they say that, but I'm okay with God, it's not affecting me? Really? Or someone who says that, I know I'm not doing what strong Christians do, people who are really close to the Lord, but I'm okay. Things are going well. I would say they're not going well. I would say that person is deceiving himself because he's talking about two different things as though they were one and the same. He's talking about his perception of himself and then the reality about himself, and they are not the same. We know Matthew 15, verse 17 through 20, for example. Where am I at here? I think okay. So we want to consider Matthew 15, 17 through 20. Junk food can negatively affect your body because Jesus is talking there about what you put into your heart, and then that comes out in the form of, and he lists a whole bunch of different sins there, right? So where do those sins come from? They come from the heart. How did they get there is the question. How did they get there? Who put them there, you might ask? Who's responsible for that? Junk thinking, if I could say it that way, will ruin your heart and corrupt your soul. And out of the heart comes all kinds of bad thoughts and bad behaviors. Pay close attention to what you are putting in your heart is the message here, okay? What you see, what you say, what you do, what you hear, all that stuff affects your heart. And again, I know I put a heart up here, and we often do this, right? We kind of pat our chest, referring to our blood pump, but God is not talking about that. The heart in Scripture is not the blood pump. I don't want to go there yet. I want to go back here. Okay, let's stay here. It's not the blood pump. It is really your mind. So when you say scripturally or spiritually your heart, you really should be pointing to your head. I know that sounds weird. Watch what goes into your heart, and we point to our head like we didn't know our body parts, right? But it really is that spiritual part of you. It affects your mental disposition. It defines your spiritual character, and it chooses which path you're going to follow throughout your life. All right, now we go to this right here. Okay, Matthew 7, verse 13 and 14 is probably very familiar to you, right? There's a narrow way that leads to life. There's a wide path that leads to destruction. Probably heard whole sermons on that throughout your life. The point I'm making here is there's only two paths. This is Jesus talking, by the way, so it comes with authority. There's only two paths. There's a good path and there's a bad path. There's a wide path, there's a narrow path, right? There's a path that leads to life, there's a path that leads somewhere else. There's not a third path. And this is where people get deceived. They think they're kind of cruising on a side street, like a frontage road or something like that. You have frontage roads here? Anyway, my point here is that you know what I'm talking about. It's a parallel road. You're not on the main highway. You're on a farmer's road, basically, that's following the highway. It's not the same thing. Inseparable from the heart are choices, decisions, and commitments. One with a good heart makes good choices, commitments, and so on. One with a bad heart makes, not surprisingly, bad choices, bad commitments, and so on. Matthew 7, verse 17 through 19, Jesus talks about the good heart produces good fruit, the bad heart produces bad fruit. This is not a lesson in botany. It is really a lesson about people. It's about people's spiritual heart conditions. This is what's so important. That's why Jesus keeps talking about this. And I believe, and I'm guilty of this in the past myself. Sometimes that just goes right over our head when we talk about church and we talk about Bible studies and we talk about, duties in the church and we talk about, things that we're facing in life and so on, but we forget about the most important thing, and that is our heart. Amen. You got to pay attention to your heart. Watch over your heart. Take care of where your heart is. Which path are you following? It's a good question to ask yourself right now. Which path are you on? Because you're on one or the other. You're not straddling both, and you're not on a third path. There is no frontage road. So, who is being given control of your heart? Is it Christ, or is it something else, or someone else? This is something you should be asking yourself as well. Who's in control of your heart? You might say you're in control, and I would say that. But really, paradoxically, the best way to control is to give up your control to Christ. I know that sounds weird to say, but you're in control of making that decision all the time. So yes, you are in control. But what you're doing with that control is you're giving it to a higher control that can manage it better than you can, better than I can. And that makes sense. I think we all know that. Matthew 6, verse 19 through 21, where your treasure is, your heart is also. So the question would be naturally, well, not where is your heart, but really, first of all, where is your treasure? Right? Because that's where your heart will be. If you know where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. I didn't say that. Jesus said that. He's the one that knows. He's the one with authority to say so. When we pay diligent attention to the actual condition of our heart, not just what we think it is or what we want it to be, then now it opens up our eyes to choices that we did not have before, that we did not see before, and things that were always there, but we were blind and inattentive to them. We were not paying attention. In case you think this lesson is just for you and not for me, let me tell you that this last year for me has been an eye-opening year. I'm not going to give you details and content and all that. I don't believe I need to. But let me just say that this is really hitting me hard right now, and I have been going through the process of looking at myself and seeing myself for who I really am. Some of it's really good, some of it not so good. And I'm willing to address even those not so good parts so that they can go away and be rectified. And I hope that you are too. I hope you're going to be courageous enough and faithful enough to your Lord to be able to do the same thing, go on that same journey that I have gone on. Sometimes Christians say things like, oh, I'm stuck. Have you ever felt that way spiritually? Like I'm just stuck. I can't seem to move forward. I've been there. I understand what that's like. They say, I can't move forward because, and then they cite some obstacle. You know, I can't move forward because of whatever it is, or a person, or a relationship. Sometimes husbands blame their wives for this. Wives blame their husbands. Sometimes people blame preachers, of all things, right? Or elders, or you know, their bosses, or their job, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But they're saying, I can't move forward spiritually because of fill in the blank here. And yet, and this is important to think about, not having choices and not being aware of opportunities are not the same thing. Think about what I just said. Not having choices and not being aware of choices are not the same thing. Because if you're not aware of the choices that are available to you, it doesn't mean they're not there. It just means you're not aware of them. It's like the truth, right? You can be ignorant of the truth. It doesn't mean the truth disappears or that it suddenly appears just because you became cognizant of it. It means that you are not aware of it yet, anyway. So this is important. God is not stuck in your circumstances. This is so important that when I talk about God and the nature of God, one thing I always talk about, that he is eternal, he's powerful, omniscient, omnipresent, etc. And I always end it with, and he's not stuck in your world. Whatever your world is. He's not stuck in your circumstances. Sometimes we like to imprison God in our circumstances. We think, oh, I can only do so much. This is harming me. This is bothersome to me. This is distressing me. This is traumatizing me. And God's in this little box that we've created, right, of thinking about our scenario. And we think God's in there too. You can't do any more than I can. Well, then he's not God to you. If God can't do any more than you can, then that would make you God equal to whatever God you claim to or profess to believe in. Our God is more powerful than our circumstances. If he wasn't, then he's not God, by definition. Just think about that. Many people, including Christians, see only what they want to see. They only hear what they want to hear, and they believe only what they want to believe. Is that true? Is that true about you? You don't have to answer that part. Don't move your head. I will see you. But isn't it true? Sometimes we hear what we want to hear, we see what we want to see, we believe what we want to believe. In the case of the Jews, for example, not even Jesus Christ can lodge those people out if they don't want to move. Think about that. The people that put Jesus on the cross were that kind of people. I don't want to be that kind of person. I don't want you to be that kind of person. So a lot of people claim to be open-minded, and yet they're actually unaware. They're inattentive. They're groping in darkness. You ever heard someone say, well, I'm really open-minded, and then they give you some narrow-minded, bigoted view about something, right? And you've probably done the same thing. I mean, in all honesty, you probably did the same thing. I've done it, didn't even know it. I'm open-minded, and then I have this very narrow, judgmental view about something. It's easy to do. Those who refuse to listen to God, and this goes for Christians and non-Christians alike, those who refuse to listen to God must be listening to something or someone else instead. Doesn't it make sense? They're listening to something or someone, whoever or whatever it is completely inferior to what God is and who God is and what he's saying. It's completely inferior. It's kind of like a basket of junk food that we saw earlier in the Costco illustration there. So far I've been saying, well, you need to be aware of your heart, and I think we're all in agreement on that, but now we want to get into the how part. A lot of my lessons are composed of two major parts. We talk about context first, or concept, and then we talk about practical application, right? What is it that you're supposed to believe, and then what do you do with that belief? This is the practical application part right here. Or how can I improve in this way? I have a question for you all. How many of you have been breathing this whole time that I've been talking? How many of you were aware that you were breathing this whole time I was talking to you? Think about this. I've been going through some studies on meditation. I'm not advocating that you become a yoga person or anything like that. But there's something to be said about meditation. You know, the first thing that meditators teach you to do is pay attention to your breathing. That's one of the first things. Primary instruction is to put things out of your mind and pay attention to your breath in and your breath out. And just focus on that. Focus on your breath in and focus on your breath out. And I know that might sound silly to you, as it did to me when I first heard it. But it is really powerful. You're paying attention. You're sensing the air filling your lungs. And then you're sensing that air leaving your lungs, leaving your body, to the exclusion of everything else and all your surroundings. Think about that. Paying attention to something that is happening automatically anyway, right? Psychosomatic, all that stuff. So your mind is, or your brain is, making you breathe all the time, but you're not aware of it. You don't appreciate breath, you don't appreciate air, so you start focusing on it. Then you start focusing on it. Or if it's deprived from you, suddenly you're very much aware how important it is. Awareness works in this way. We stop dwelling on what is going on around us, the noise, the distractions, the TV, social media, video games, gaming itself, etc. We close our eyes and we breathe deeply. We pay attention to what is going on inside of you. Pay attention to what's going on inside of you. And we're talking, of course, now about our spiritual awareness. And then start opening up your heart to all the spiritual input that you have received or been receiving over the months and years and possibly decades. Think about all the Bible readings that you have done or that have been done for you. All the sermons that you've heard. All the classes that you've sat through. All the words of Jesus that you have read. Think about the Spirit's call to your heart. I know the Spirit's talk to you. I don't mean like audibly, okay? You've got issues if that's the case. But I'm talking about the Spirit does talk to our heart. I am confident that all of you know what I'm saying. And when you start opening yourself up to that and realizing all of that you've been given over this time and all that's been going into your heart, you start realizing that God has been talking to you for some time. But have you been paying attention to what he's saying? Those are not the same things. God talking and you paying attention. God's talking. That's what he does. Paying attention is on you. God doesn't force you or me to pay attention to him. So what have you been doing? Have you been preparing yourself to listen? Have you been listening to what he has been saying? And what has he been saying? Are you listening to and following where he has been leading you? I can tell you, I have not always done this. And I'm ashamed to tell you that, honestly. You'd think someone like me would know better. But I, like everyone else, kind of get in a rut, right? And just stay there. I lived in Alaska for 9 years. I know what it's like to drive in ruts on the highway, ice ruts. And when you get in them, it's really hard to get out of them, honestly. And when you get in them, it's really easy to stay in them because, well, the path is already there. You practically don't have to drive. You could just put the car in the rut and it'll take you. And I do think that that's what people do with church and, religion and so on sometimes. They just kind of put themselves in the rut and then it kind of takes you where you're supposed to go, I guess. They're not really thinking about it too much. So how have you responded to what God has said? God's been talking to you. We've established that. God's been talking to you probably for a long time, whether you realize it or not. So what have you been doing in response to that? How have you been listening? What needs to be done? What needs to be done? Philippians chapter 4 in verse, let's get here, verse 8 there, verse you already know, whatever is true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, good repute, excellence or virtue, anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. What is he saying there? Meditate. Stop what you're doing. Pay attention to what's going on inside you, to what God has put inside you, to what God is giving you every day. God is giving you something right now. I don't know if you realize that or not. And it's not coming from me. It's really coming from him and his word. I'm just a mouthpiece, right? I'm just saying what this is saying. But this is what you should be doing. And I say should, not like this is what Chad expects you to do. This has nothing to do with me personally. It has something to do with you and God, your relationship with God. Pay attention to that. You can't do that when your ears are blasting, being blasted, I should say, with all kinds of things. I go to the gym regularly, and I see virtually everyone but me, really, is wearing headphones or earbuds or something like this. They're all blasting something into their head. I've seen people, at Starbucks with their Bible open, and they've got headphones on. They're listening to music. And it's like, okay, I get that. Maybe it's calm music, but probably it's not. It's just music they like, and they're trying to study the Word. You ever see kids do that, in high school, for example? Maybe you did it yourself. I don't know. You're watching TV and doing your homework at the same time. You can only focus on one thing. I know we always think we're multitasking, but that's really not possible in this context. The company of noisy and irreligious friends might be what we listen to. You can't watch over your heart and not listen to and focus on what God is saying. It just makes sense. And then in Philippians chapter 4, verse 9, what does he say? Those things which you, and if I could paraphrase, those things which you have meditated on, now that you're paying attention to them, what are you supposed to do? Practice them. Put them into use. Practice them. Remember my lesson? Concept, practical application. What's practical mean? Practicable. This is what we're supposed to practice. This is what we're supposed to do. Simple stuff, really, honestly, but super important. Doesn't have to be complex to be important. Awareness has to be followed with action, as obedience follows learning. It's not enough to merely be aware of what God's saying. You have to also put that into practice. Okay, I want you to get in your Bible at some point in this lesson. Let's do that right now. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 7 through 9, or 7 through 10 rather. Ephesians chapter 5, 7 through 10. You know this passage. I'm certain of it. It's not a new passage to you, probably. Paul says, therefore, do not be partakers with them. He's talking about those who walk in darkness, those who God's wrath is directed toward. Do not be partakers with them, for you were formerly darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the light consists in all goodness and righteousness and truth. That should describe your spiritual behavior, by the way. Trying to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. Think about this. Trying to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. What he's really saying here is you might need to recalibrate. You might need to adjust what's going on in your heart a little bit there. And that's okay. You think, well, what's recalibrate mean? Well, if you've ever driven a car, you're recalibrating all the time with your steering wheel. All the time. You don't just kind of set the wheel in motion and hold on to it tight and never move it. You're constantly doing this, right? You're probably unconscious of it. Now you're going to be paying attention to it, aren't you? But you're constantly recalibrating. Well, this is what he's talking about. Think about what it means to be a child of light. And then walk as children of light and learn what is pleasing to the Lord, not by your own estimation, not what you think is pleasing to the Lord, because quite frankly, I don't mean to be rude here, but it really doesn't matter what you think is pleasing to the Lord. What matters is what God says is pleasing to him. Let him determine that. And then you listen and you follow and you obey and so on. And things will go well for you. It will. Okay? So let him tell you. He is far wiser than you. You brought up that point here. God is smarter than us. Sometimes we like to tell God how to do his job. And if you are telling God how to do his business, his job, then really you're playing God. And you're not treating him as God. He's not God to you. He's just an idol. He's just a concept. And you don't want to be accused of idolatry, especially as a Christian, right? So it's good to ask yourself, for example, well, what would a man or a woman, if you're a woman, what would a man of God do in this case? I don't want to put this down to a WWJD thing. What would Jesus do? Well, what would you do? What should you do? What would Jesus do if you want to go there? And then I would ask the question, secondly, why would Jesus do that? Not just what would he do, but why is he doing it? What's motivating him to do that? Well, what's motivating you to do whatever you are going to do? Stop thinking and reacting in a way that you've conditioned yourself to think and react. This is where it comes to me right here. This is what I've been paying attention to this last year, because I was conditioned to think and react in a certain way for most of my life. And now I'm being trained and training myself through the Word to think and react the way that I'm supposed to. And that might seem like you think I'm being, I'm going to even say the word falsely humble. Like, oh, yeah, you're saying that because, you want us all in on this. No, this is exactly what I've been going through. Maybe you all are better than me. You've all, exceeded that line of thinking, so on. If that's the case, so be it. I'm telling you, I have been struggling with this. Maybe you're struggling with this too. Rethink, reassess what God expects of you. Step back and take a look at yourself. Look at your conduct. And listen to yourself. Listen to your words. And put yourself in the shoes of the one you're dealing with. And think about this. How would they feel if you were saying to them what you were saying? How would you feel? Let me say it correct. How would you feel if what you're saying to them, you were hearing from someone else? What if they were talking to you the way you're talking to them? That ought to bring up some attention right there. Because I've talked to people in the past that I've had people come to me and say, well, I talked to you before, but you kind of treated me kind of rudely. And I remembered the conversation. I wasn't trying to be rude at all. But I wasn't really careful. Or sensitive might be a better word here, about that person and where they were at. And I said things just kind of like I do, like, well, here, matter of fact. And they took it very poorly. I could have done better on that. And I want to do better on that. You might have done things like that too. I don't know. Basically, what I'm saying here is, what's coming out of you? What is coming out of you? Because I am confident that whatever is coming out of you, it's what you put in there. And that can be good as well as bad, right? You reap what you sow. Well, that doesn't mean always bad stuff, like if you sow weed seeds, you get weeds, right? That's bad. What if you sow good stuff? What are you going to reap? You're going to reap good things. Amen. So it's just a matter of, what are you doing? What are you putting inside you? 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 6 through 11. You guys just studied this, I think, recently. You must have in your morning class, so I don't have to go through this in too much detail. But he does tell you in this passage how to become a good servant of Christ Jesus. For time's sake, I'm going to let you read that on your own. You got your notes, right? So he's really saying how to practice being a good servant of Jesus, how to be in communion with God. And what does he tell you? He says, first of all, constantly nourished on the words of God. Well, that makes sense. If your faith is going to survive, you got to feed it. If you had an animal, a pet of some kind, you didn't feed it, I think it would die. I'm a great murderer of houseplants, and largely because I forget about them. I forget to water them. I forget to feed them, and they die. And I walk by it one time, and I go like, it's dead. I wonder what happened. Well, nothing happened. That was the problem, right? I mean, if you're going to have a responsibility over something, then you need to take care of it. You have responsibility over your soul. You need to take care of it. Because no one else is going to take care of it for you. And not even God himself is going to take care of it for you. In other words, instead of you. He'll take care of it with you. He'll help you on the journey, but he's not going to do it instead of you. Do not engage in or give attention to foolish ideas, foolish talk, and foolish doctrine, because it leads you away from sound doctrine, sound teaching, and what God wants you to hear. Do not fixate on bodily discipline to the neglect of your spiritual discipline. One is far more important than the other. I just told you I go to the gym. I go there 2 or 3 times a week. I have bulging muscles that I hide with my jacket. That's why I wear this. Not really, but still. But I play racquetball. I do play racquetball 2, sometimes 3 times a week as well. So I'm trying to keep fit. We talked about motion this morning in class, that you got to keep moving. I take that seriously. But all that physical exercise and all the, the movement and everything else, that's all just affecting, largely my physical body. What about my spiritual body? Is that moving? Am I keeping that in motion? Am I feeding that? Am I exercising that? Well, they always say in the gym, if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's so true. Things will atrophy. Your faith can atrophy. I mean, that's very possible. A lot of people have had that happen to them. He says, labor and strive, right? And that means to fix your hope on the living God. Labor and strive to do it. What does that mean? Well, it means it takes time, energy, and effort. It requires giving up lesser things in pursuit of far more important things. Things that are central and contribute to your overall purpose. So really, what is Paul saying? He's saying what the Proverbs said. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it come the springs of life. Watch over your heart. There's several things to consider, what we ought to be aware of in particular, besides what we have said. There's several things. First of all, be aware of how blessed you really are. Most of the world lives in destitution, abject poverty, hand-to-mouth existence. Most of the world lives that way. And that's been true for most of human history, by the way. Likely you have multiple choices of food. You probably have a refrigerator or a cupboard full of food. You have stores and restaurants you can go to. You probably have ample clothing, probably multiple pairs of shoes. You have entertainment at your disposal. You can drink coffee all the time, anytime you want to. Think about the world that we live in. I'm a coffee snob. That's why I said that. I probably should have prefaced that. We have cars, we have cell phones, we have computers, we have appliances, we have sanitary conditions, we have disposable income, we have privileges and creature comforts that most of the world does not enjoy. And I'm not saying you should be guilty of that, because that's not what's being asked of you. Be guilty because you're blessed. Be grateful because you're blessed. Be grateful for that. But in order to be grateful for it, you have to be consciously aware of it. You can't be grateful for something you don't know exists or that you're not paying attention to. So pay attention. Be very aware. The fact that we can meet together as a congregation like we're doing right now without government intrusion or government punishment is something that many Christians around the world are unable to do. Some are fined for doing that. Some are put in prison for doing that. Some of them just disappear. It's true. This is happening in our world today. Secondly, be aware of all that God has done for you to make fellowship with him possible. Ephesians chapter 3:11, if you read any of my stuff I've written, I use this passage probably in every single publication. Ephesians 3:11 talks about the eternal purpose of God being carried out in Christ Jesus our Lord. What is that eternal purpose? Well, it's a great deal of time and planning and orchestration and work that was done on your behalf. And God is not asking you to reimburse him, because you could never pay for that anyway, nor could I. He's just asking you to be grateful. Amen. And to express that gratitude in the form of obedience. Because obedience really is the highest expression of gratitude. Colossians 2, verse 7, be overflowing with gratitude, not just for a meal, that too, not just at home or for your circumstances, those things too, but for salvation itself. And I was glad to hear that, on the table, in the class, and, that there's a lot of that being discussed here. That's great. This is where it should be discussed. What's being discussed at your home, though? And what are you thinking about on your own? Think about that. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just throwing the question out there. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 9. Think of what he says. He who lacks these things is blind or short-sighted. He has myopia, if you're familiar with eyesight problems, okay? Having forgotten his purification from his former sins. A weak and undernourished faith leads to a lack of awareness for the big picture. Just not being aware. Just stumbling through life, autopilot, stuck in a rut, just kind of pointing your soul in a direction, hope it makes it where it's supposed to go. That is not the way to be a Christian. Thirdly, there might be fellow Christians going through difficult times and may need your help. Be aware of those people, okay? Because it's going to be you someday, most likely. We all need each other. Romans chapter 12, verse 15 through 16, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, be of the same mind toward one another. Don't be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. I think he's talking about church cliques here, in essence. Don't just hang around your own family. It bothers me in my congregation when I see family always hanging around talking to their family and not to our visitors. You can always talk to your family later. Talk to those other people first. Talk to the people who are really struggling first. Talk to the people who just got out of surgery, or just lost a loved one, or just going through hard times. Talk to them first. Pay attention to those people. Look around. Be aware. Don't be so fixated on your own life and be self-absorbed that you miss opportunities to rejoice and to weep and to comfort and to help and to pray for other people. Speaking to myself here. I have missed opportunities. And I don't want to miss those opportunities anymore. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 28 through 29. I think what Paul says. He's gone through a list of all the hardships he's gone through, which is probably more than you and I will ever go through in our life as Christians. And then he says at the end of that, apart from such external things, there's always a daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Wow. Think of the implications. Paul has been through so much personally, and yet he realizes he needs to pay attention to Christians and their churches. He's not sidelined or distracted by his own self so much that he forgets who he's working with and working for. Wow. In the Hebrew book, after speaking of the supremacy of Christ and being over all the angels and over all of creation, the writer says, for this reason we must pay much closer attention to what we have heard, so that we do not drift away from it. Wow. First of all, there's instruction, and then there's warning. Pay attention. Instruction. Warning. You can drift away from it. It is possible. You're not immune to that. You're not invincible. You can make a decision to drift away from it just by not paying attention to what we have heard. Amen. Think about this. The world is filled with noise and distractions, time-wasting entertainment. You know that as well as I do. Petty little concerns scream for our immediate attention, while extremely important things often remain quiet and thus deemed expendable. When we're not paying attention, bad things happen. You all heard about that helicopter and airplane crash over Washington, D.C.? I don't know what happened exactly, but largely it came down to one or the other wasn't paying attention to the other. And they crashed. And a lot of people died. Souls die when they don't pay attention. Think about that. I mean, wow. There's a really great picture there. It's a powerful and disturbing picture, but it's something that really should capture our attention. It's so easy to drift away from what drew us to God in the first place. It's one thing to take your eyes off the road or fail to read the room, as I said earlier. It's a far worse thing to lose sight of Christ than to lose your soul because you put it on autopilot and forgot, of all things, what's important. And because it is so easy to drift, we need to pay extra effort. That's what the Hebrew writer is saying here. Pay extra effort to stay close to God, to His Word, to your commitment. Watch over your heart. No one else can do that for you. It's no one else's responsibility to watch over your heart. I can help you watching over your heart, but I can't do it for you, and vice versa. Be careful to what goes in your heart, because eventually it will come out. A lot of Christians talk a good talk, but you watch them over time, bad stuff coming out. Be careful, be alert, be aware of what is going on, because you cannot afford not to. There's just too much at stake. There really is. There's too much at stake. And then do not just think you are aware, but actually do what it takes to be aware. Open up your heart to God if you haven't. Let him expose you for what you really are. You're not going to like the experience. I'm confident of that. It's painful, but it is necessary, and in the end, it produces good things. And it needs to happen if you want to be with him. You have to open up your heart. You have to pay attention. You have to be aware. You have to do these things. Not because you're a Christian in a church and, the preacher's telling you, but because that's what you committed to God when you became a Christian, if indeed you are one. You committed to that. God is telling you, remember what you committed in your baptism. Speaking of baptism, there might be some here this morning who are not baptized into Christ, and all this stuff that I just talked to you about applies to you too, but you just haven't made the commitment yet. Maybe it's time to make that commitment. God's talking to you this morning. Maybe God's been talking to you for a long time. I would think so, honestly. And if you're here, that's probably the case. God's talking to your heart. Listen to what he says. Do what you need to do. If there's any way we can help you, of course we want to, as we stand and sing the song that's been selected for us.